Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the heart of MEV-014 and taking a breathtaking journey across the green blanket of our planet. We're going to be exploring the magnificent, intricately connected biotic resources that quite literally keep the Earth alive. Down here on the ground, these systems are highly complex, they're fragile, and honestly, they're operating on a knife's edge. Today, we're exploring the 4 critical biotic systems that sustain life and why understanding them isn't just great for your environmental science studies, it's a matter of urgent global survival. Let's get started. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. India's forests and grasslands. 2. The agrobiodiversity crisis. 3. Livestock and production systems. 4. Freshwater and marine resources. And finally, 5. Sustainable conservation strategies. Section 1. India's forests and grasslands, the green blanket. So when we talk about forests on a global scale, we're talking about massive ecosystems covering roughly 31% of our land area. But hey, a forest isn't just any random cluster of trees, right? For your exams, you'll want to remember how the UN Food and Agriculture Organization strictly defines it. They classify a forest as land occupying more than 0.5 hectares with trees higher than 5 meters and a canopy cover exceeding 10%. And crucially, this specifically excludes land that's mainly used for agriculture or urban development. Precision really matters when we're classifying these biomes. Now, zooming into India, the sheer geographic diversity is it's incredible. The subcontinent is this complex, beautiful mosaic of different forest types. You might be wondering, why so many? Well, it all comes down to climate. Variations in annual rainfall from the absolutely drenched Western Ghats all the way to the arid, dry regions of Rajasthan, combined with massive shifts in temperature, literally carve out these distinct, highly specialized vegetation zones. To make sense of all this diversity, scientists use Champion and Seth's classification system. This is a fantastic memory hook for you to remember. It divides India's forests into 5 major groups. We've got moist tropical forests with their dense, rich canopies, dry tropical forests that shed their leaves, and then, as we climb higher in elevation, we move into montane subtropical, montane temperate, and finally, the rugged alpine scrub. It's a perfect example of how form always follows climate. Now, why does this classification actually matter to our survival? Well, it's because forests serve an absolutely vital dual role. First, there's the productive role, which is super tangible. Think timber for construction, medicinal plants, and crucial food security for rural communities. But then, there's the protective role, which is arguably even more critical for the whole planet. We're talking carbon sequestration, soil conservation, and acting as a massive repository of genetic wealth. They do so much more than just provide wood. They actively protect the terrestrial world as we know it. Section 2. The Agrobiodiversity Crisis. Cultivating Survival. Okay, zooming in from those wild, untouched forests to human-managed land, we step into the deeply fragile world of agrobiodiversity. This is officially defined as the interaction between the environment, genetic resources, and culturally diversified management systems. Now, what's absolutely fascinating here, and something you should definitely note down, is the inclusion of human culture. Traditional farming knowledge is actually a foundational biological part of this diversity. Without that human element, this unique biodiversity literally ceases to exist. And this brings us to a stark, urgent contrast. On one side, we have modern conventional agriculture. Sure, it has massively increased our global food output, but it's also largely responsible for devastating biodiversity loss, mainly through monoculture. On the flip side, traditional and diversified systems like, combining on-farm and off-farm activities, well, they actively limit the pressure on our natural resources and maintain this vital ecological balance. But unfortunately, that traditional balance, it's slipping globally. And that leads us to a number that should honestly stop you right in your tracks. 90%. Yup, 90% of our global food, energy, and protein comes from just 15 plant and 8 animal species. I mean, think about that. Wheat, rice, and maize alone provide more than half of all global plant-based calories. We've homogenized our global food supplies so intensely that we've caused massive genetic erosion. A system this homogeneous is deeply, dangerously vulnerable to things like climate change and disease sweeping through. Section 3, Livestock and Production Systems, the animal anchor. That vulnerability naturally shifts our focus to the domestic animals we rely on for survival. Let's look at the specific traits of Indian cattle breeds. You've got the prominent hump, a long face, upright horns, looping ears, a dewlap, and slender legs. These are brilliant examples of form following function. These specific physical adaptations are exactly what allow these animals to survive, regulate their body heat, and function in incredibly harsh, hot environments.
And, where these animals live totally dictates how they are managed. According to the State of Food and Agriculture 2009 report, extensive grazing happens in marginal dry areas, places that are usually totally unfit for growing crops. Now, this system produces a smaller fraction of our global output, like 7% of beef and 5% of milk, but it relies on nomadic movements, which puts way less concentrated stress on the land. Contrast that with intensive grazing in temperate climates. Sure, it generates much higher yields, but it comes with a significantly heavier ecological footprint.
Section 4, Freshwater and Marine Resources, the lifeblood. So none of the forests, crops, or livestock we've talked about can survive without this final resource. We love to call Earth the blue planet, right? But consider this for a second. How much of Earth's water is actually usable for life on land? We're surrounded by these vast oceans, but how much can terrestrial life actually drink? The answer is almost terrifyingly small. A whopping 97.25% of the world's water is locked away in saline oceans. Another 2.05% is completely frozen in glaciers and ice caps. Subsurface groundwater, that's just 0.68%. And the lakes, rivers, and atmospheric water we rely on every single day, they make up about 0.02% of the planet's total water. The accessible freshwater fraction is shockingly, amazingly tiny. And beneath that tiny, tiny fraction lies something entirely invisible to the naked eye, the hyporheic zone. When you look at a river, you're really only seeing the surface flow. But beneath that, flowing dynamically through the sediments of the floodplain, is a massive hidden exchange of water. It is the critical interface where groundwater and surface water interact. If we over-extract or pollute, we destroy this unseen ecological feature, basically crippling the entire river system from the bottom up.
Section 5, Sustainable Conservation Strategies, the Path Forward.
Okay, we've seen the sheer fragility of our forests, our super narrow agricultural base, and the absolute scarcity of accessible freshwater. If we want to preserve this natural capital, there are 4 steps that are just non-negotiable. 1, massive investment in natural resource rehabilitation. 2, adopting macroeconomic and agricultural policies that actually reward sustainability over just chasing high yields. 3, culturally and legally protecting traditional farmer knowledge. And 4, promoting rural livelihood opportunities, because at the end of the day, poverty directly drives resource overexploitation.
Which leaves us with one defining question. Can modern agriculture and human development devise methods to coexist with the biosphere rather than destroy it? Everything we've looked at today suggests we're standing right at a tipping point. I really hope this explainer has given you the clarity to understand these vital biotic resources and the inspiration to be part of the solution. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and keep exploring.